Growing up, my mother was always an advocate for homeownership. She purchased her first piece of real estate at just 20 years old and never missed the opportunity to remind me that if nothing else, she had something to leave her children. I remember landing my very first big girl job in Atlanta at a global consulting firm. And one of the first things that she told me was, do not go out there paying those high rent prices and throwing your money down the drain. You'll only be helping others to create generational wealth. You have your degree and a good job. Build your own wealth and get a house. I was just 22 years old at the time, so I did not take her advice at first. I wanted the nice high-rise apartment in the city. Well, after paying rent every month, that was well over 30% of my monthly paycheck, that following year, I took the plunge and bought my first 3-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom home on the south side of Atlanta. Here in the US, home ownership is the cornerstone of the American dream. It's the symbol of economic and social mobility and the foundation for building generational wealth. So much so that it has now become the ethos of opportunity for not just Americans, but many people worldwide. So what does it mean to have a home? For many of us, home is a safe haven where we gather with close family and friends. For others, home is where we work, play, and rest. Since the UN declared access to safe and affordable housing a fundamental human right in 1948, many of us take having a place to return to for granted. You all have a place to return home to, right? Yet right now, in the US, 3.8 million households are housing insecure. This is to say that these households could not find a safe, affordable place to call home. In 2019, Atlanta's deficit reached 100,000 homes. Research suggests that this deficit is so large, it would take nearly a decade for us to build our way out of the shortage, even if we accelerated the pace of building more new homes. We tend to think of housing insecurity as a symptom of poverty or that it's associated with homelessness. While poverty is a contributing factor to housing insecurity, it is not the whole story. The poverty rate in America actually decreased from 15.3% in 2010 to 11.4% in 2020, even as housing insecurity grew. And though there is a positive correlation between housing insecurity and homelessness, the underlying causes of housing insecurity are far more complex, and the faces of it aren't always who we expect. I want to give you just 3 examples of those considered to be the housing insecure, also known as the hidden homeless. The housing insecure could be the single parent, temporarily displaced because their apartment's rent has increased by more than 25% over the course of just 1 year. This leaves them to rent an extended stay hotel room for themselves and their kids. Rachel Jones, a New Hampshire mother, found herself in this very situation. She, like many others, are then forced to make the hard choice between housing for the night, eating an adequate meal, or maybe even picking up a necessary healthcare prescription. What's worse, living in a rented hotel room is not cheap. United Way estimates the cost to be anywhere between $1,200 and $2,500 per month, making it even harder for families just like Rachel's to save enough money for a more permanent solution. College students are a second group. Students at a university in Northern California endure 2-hour commutes and couch surf with family and friends due to the housing crisis. On-campus accommodations are full, and they're unable to locate an affordable 1 or 2 bedroom rental in close biking, walking, and mass transit proximity. Some even resort to living out of their cars. This too is housing insecurity. The underlying issue here being the lack of middle housing, such as low-rise apartments, duplexes, and townhomes in the places that need them. Ultimately, the choice is either couch surfing at best or homelessness at worst. And finally, the housing insecure are also those without access to basic indoor plumbing. Analysis of the US Census Bureau estimates that 500,000 households lack clean running water and flushing toilets. 3 in 4 of these households are located in places like Los Angeles, New York, and even here in Atlanta. People of color are disproportionately impacted. Due to traces of lead in the water, residents in communities like Flint, Michigan, and Jackson, Mississippi, have long experienced the lack of clean, drinkable water. Further, loopholes that incentivize large corporations to buy homes or build pockets of homes as a diversification strategy inadvertently contribute to the plight of the housing insecure. These actions drive up home prices as well as corresponding real estate taxes. In these communities, long-term residents are often displaced when they can no longer afford the real estate tax on their homes. And for the prospective homeowner, home ownership is even more unattainable. While preparing for this talk, I found this quote from a peer on social media. She states, "I just sat and cried, thinking about how I've paid about $160,000 in rent since leaving my parents' home at 18. I'll be 40 in 10 years and will likely never own a home of my own. I'm told that I can't afford one. Yet I've purchased a rich person a second home outright in just 12 years." I honestly can't thank my mom enough for her early advice on home ownership. And as a homeowner turned real estate entrepreneur, I've seen housing insecurity firsthand. For 3 years, I was managing a portfolio of vacation rental properties, ranging from apartments to family homes and even a cute little tiny house. During that time, I received numerous rental requests, many from the housing insecure. All shared a similar request for an extended stay or a discount. In the midst of hustle culture, it's easy to let the relentless pursuit of capital gain overshadow the basic human right to affordable, adequate housing. And I was no exception. As the number of these inquiries grew, it became clear that I no longer wanted to be a part of the status quo, simply using housing as a commodity to be bought and sold. I wanted to be a part of the solution, one that properly balances capital gain and social gain. Because access to adequate housing is a human right, and not having it is an injustice. I soon converted my rentals to market rate housing and prioritized those in need, such as university students, healthcare workers, and seniors. And I am not alone. Many of my peers, right here in Atlanta and beyond, have taken similar measures. This paradigm shift may have decreased my rental income, but it increased the impact in my community. One instance that particularly stands out is of an empty nester we'll call Emily. For the last few years, Emily had been battling health issues alongside an abusive husband. Unable to work, her income decreased, leaving her stuck because her health insurance was tied to her husband's. Well, by a saving grace, Emily received a job offer here in Atlanta. But with the current sky-high housing prices and her limited income, she had no idea how she'd make the move. She heard about me through a friend of a friend and decided to reach out. She asked if I had anything available for rent within her budget, and of course, I obliged. Decisions like this, that strike a sweet balance between capital gain and social gain, help to fight housing insecurity from the inside out. But housing insecurity cannot be overcome by just real estate entrepreneurs alone, nor can it be achieved by just nonprofits or just policymakers. Solving housing insecurity requires collaboration across all 3 of these stakeholder groups. In the Bronx, faith-based organizations like the United Methodist City Society have partnered with local policymakers to convert shuttered churches to additional housing. One recent project is of a 12-story building converted to housing for seniors and the formerly incarcerated. Here in Atlanta, a task force known as House ATL completed an affordable housing renovation in one of our city's struggling school districts. Rather than designating just 20% of these units affordable, they took it one step further and flipped this requirement and made 80% of those units affordable. They also decided to offer after-school tutoring for the students or the children of those who lived in the building. And a great thing happened. The test scores for these students increased so much that the overall school district rating improved. These are just two examples. We need even more collaboration in all of us to tackle the beast that is housing insecurity successfully. I've come to realize that the TED community is a group of people who desire tremendously to change the world for the better. I call upon each of you. What can you do to disrupt the systems that have kept renters forever renting and the housing insecure just one step away from homelessness? Who in your circle has the influence or wherewithal to undo the policies limiting the types of structures that can be created and the policies that make otherwise usable space unusable? In my vision, we'll all work together to leverage vacant spaces created as a byproduct of COVID-19 to help fill this housing gap. Spaces like plazas, places of worship, and even office buildings. And in parallel, there are technical solutions that through upskilling place the power of community development back into the hands of community members, like homeowners, willing to create extra space, whether in that empty lot that's been sitting idle just a block over, or even in their own backyards, specifically for affordable rental to the housing insecure, allowing them the opportunity to become owners of their own homes. Now, wouldn't that be the ultimate balance of capital gain and social gain? Thank you.